It was a quiet Friday evening, and Sarah sat on the couch in the dimly lit living room, scrolling through her phone. The house was still, save for the occasional creak of the old wood floors. The air smelled faintly of fresh laundry and the vanilla-scented candles that were burning on the coffee table. Little Emma, the child she was babysitting, was curled up on the rug, playing with her stuffed animals. She was 6 years old, with a mop of brown curls and large innocent eyes that seemed to ask 1,000 questions without uttering a word. It had been a relatively peaceful evening so far. Sarah had just texted her friend back when the shrill ring of the landline phone pierced the quiet. Startled, Sarah glanced over at the phone. Who could be calling this late? The family she was babysitting for had mentioned that they would be out until after midnight, and she was the only one in the house. She set her phone down and picked up the receiver, pressing it to her ear. Hello. Silence. Sarah frowned. Hello, she repeated, her voice firmer this time. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a heavy, uneven breathing. It sounded labored, almost as if someone was trying to hide their presence, but their breathing gave them away. The sound was slow and deliberate, each inhale punctuated by a rasping exhale. Sarah's heart rate picked up. Who is this? She demanded, her mind racing with possibilities. A prank call. Someone playing a cruel joke. The voice that answered was a hoarse whisper, barely audible, but unmistakably chilling. I'm inside your house. A cold shiver crawled up Sarah's spine. She glanced over at Emma, who was still playing with her toys, oblivious to the conversation unfolding on the phone. But Sarah felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread. There was something wrong, something very wrong. Who are you? Sarah's voice trembled slightly, but she tried to remain calm. What do you want? There was a long pause, and then the whisper came again, as if it were meant to haunt her. I'm inside your house, Sarah. I'm right here. The line went dead. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, the receiver still pressed to her ear. Her breath caught in her throat as she processed the chilling words. The voice had been so close, too close. How did the caller know her name? And more importantly, how could they be inside the house? She quickly hung up the phone and dropped it onto the couch, her mind racing. She had to make sure everything was locked. She had to check the doors, the windows, everything. With shaky hands, she rushed to the front door. She tugged on the knob to make sure it was locked, then checked the deadbolt. Secure. She moved to the windows next, checking each one to ensure they were closed tight. Every lock, every latch was in place. The house felt normal again, but the unease gnawed at her. Her eyes darted back toward the living room. Emma was still on the floor, absorbed in her game. Sarah's pulse slowed a fraction, but the feeling of being watched lingered, a persistent ache at the back of her neck. She turned back toward the door, then stopped dead in her tracks. There was no sound, no movement, but something felt off. Every instinct screamed at her to be vigilant. Suddenly, Sarah's phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with an incoming call. She hesitated for a moment, then glanced at the caller ID. It was an unknown number. She couldn't help herself. The dread, like a tightening fist around her chest, made her pick up the phone. Sarah, I'm hiding. Come find me. Sarah's blood ran cold. It was Emma's voice, unmistakably. But how could she be calling her? Emma had been sitting on the rug the last time Sarah checked. She wasn't anywhere near the phone. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to steady her breath. This couldn't be happening. The voice on the other end of the line continued to whisper. I'm hiding, Sarah. Come find me. The words came through in fragments, like they were being spoken from a distance, muffled by something. Or someone. Emma wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the phone, but the voice was so real. Sarah quickly turned her head to oversee the hallway where the little girl sat earlier, but couldn't see. Panic surged in Sarah's chest, her heart pounding as fear gripped her. She had to find Emma, she had to make sure she was safe. Dropping the phone, she bolted toward the hallway, her footsteps heavy and frantic. Her breath came in ragged gasps as her eyes darted around the shadows that seemed to stretch and grow with every passing second. The house, once familiar, now felt vast, oppressive, its walls closing in around her. "Sarah?" Emma's voice, faint and soft, drifted through the darkness. "Come find me." Sarah's throat constricted, her body frozen for a split second before the panic surged again. She forced herself to swallow the rising lump of fear, pushing it down with every ounce of willpower she had. She couldn't break now, couldn't let the terror consume her. Not when Emma needed her. She hurried back to the living room, her eyes scanning frantically. The room was empty. No sign of Emma. The cold, oppressive air felt wrong, more suffocating than the rest of the house. Something or someone was in there with her. "Emma?" Sarah called, trying to steady her voice, but it came out trembling, betraying her fear. The silence stretched for a moment, then a voice too sweet, too wrong answered from the darkened corners of the room, sending an icy shiver through her spine. "I am still in the house." Sarah's breath hitched. The words were a whisper, but they were sharp, like ice against her skin. She tried to speak, to force her voice steady, but the words caught in her throat, twisted by dread. "Emma, where are you? Answer me." The voice shifted, dropping to a soft whisper, barely audible. "I am hiding, Sarah, in the closet. Come find me." The room felt colder. The shadows seemed to pulse, shifting and lengthening. Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears. She had to go. She had to find Emma. But the house, the darkness, it was closing in on her, suffocating every step she took. Sarah's heart slammed against her ribs. She had to act fast. Without another word, she hurried toward the closet door in the hallway, her steps quick and uneven. The closer she got, the heavier the air seemed to become, pressing down on her chest. She reached for the doorknob, her fingers trembling, and slowly twisted it open. The door creaked loudly as it swung open, revealing the dark interior of the closet. Sarah's eyes darted around the space, half expecting to see something move, but the closet was empty. The shelves were bare, save for a few scattered shoes and old coats. And then she heard it. A faint, muffled sound someone was breathing, hiding in the corner. Sarah's blood ran cold. Her hand shot to her mouth to stifle a scream as she slowly pulled the other door open wider. There, in the farthest corner of the closet, sitting huddled in the dark, was Emma. Sarah was terrified seeing Emma in the closet. The little girl's wide eyes met Sarah's, her lips trembling as she whispered, "He's still in the house. He told me not to move." Sarah's mind reeled as she pulled Emma into her arms, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to call the parents, to shout for help, but every instinct told her that the phone would do no good. The voice, the one that had whispered on the phone, was close now. Too close. Suddenly, a chill ran down her spine, and Sarah froze. She could feel it. A presence behind her. A cold breath, right against her skin. Before she could react, a cold hand touched her shoulder. The grip was firm, unyielding, and the touch sent an icy shock through her entire body. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she slowly turned her head, her body frozen in terror. Standing just inches behind her was a man, a tall, gaunt figure, wearing dark clothing, his face obscured by the shadows. His eyes were hollow, black voids that seemed to swallow up the light around him. He was smiling, a wide, terrifying grin that stretched unnaturally across his face. He was inside the house, and Sarah had no idea how to escape. Her heart pounded in her ears as she clutched Emma closer to her chest. She wanted to scream, but no sound came from her mouth. She could only stare, paralyzed by fear, as the man's smile grew wider, closer. The last thing Sarah saw before everything went dark was the glint of a sharp object in his hand, a glimmer that reflected the dim light from the hallway. The darkness swallowed her whole. And then, there was silence. The next morning, the police arrived at the house, responding to a worried call from Emma's parents. They found the house in perfect order, no sign of forced entry, no evidence of a break-in. But both Sarah and Emma were gone. There was no sign of them anywhere in the house, not a single trace. The only thing left behind was the landline phone off the hook, the line still buzzing with static. And the whisper, faint but unmistakable, lingered in the air. "I'm still here."